And this is Christian and Rye and Carlin and Adam and Jesse and Jay and Joey and Zane and... Wait, how many men does she live with? You know, this was a lot more innocent when I wrote it back when I was like 18. Let's just, for funsies, let's just count real quick. Like 8? And then these new 4? Could that be a zodiac sign thing? Could I make that a zodiac sign thing? I'm gonna make that a zodiac sign thing. Nahamo Zodiac. Oh my god. That's brilliant. I mean, we've got a whole language. I guess we may as well have a zodiac to go with it. Hey guys, welcome to chapter 17 of the Castor Saga. If you're new here, we have a whole playlist of all the chapters previous to this, as well as the official book trailer. Spoiler alert, this is chapter 17. You have been warned. Chapter 17. More Brothers. Jesse was Meli, Jay, and Joey's cousin by blood. He had black hair, pale skin, and blue eyes like Jay and Joey. But he stood shorter than them. He was barely 6 foot. He was still pretty tall, but he was the shortest as well as the youngest of all of Meli's Nahamo-born brothers. Christian, Adam, Rye, and Carlin had all been inducted into Nahamo. They all had brown eyes and dark brown hair, except for Adam, who had black hair. They were all between 5'11 and 5'6, and different shades of tan, while Jay, Joey, Jesse, and Zane, and all of Meli's friends, were pretty pale or pink in skin tone. Jesse, Christian, and Rye were all shadow casters, while Adam and Carlin were nature casters. In Nahamo, it didn't really matter much what you were labeled originally. You could learn and practice basically whatever you wanted. Jesse and Carlin both had green eye glow, while Rye had orange, Adam had blue, and Christian had yellow. The 5 boys stood there confused as Meli got out of the pool, turned down the radio, and then grabbed a towel wrapping it around herself as she ran over to give Jesse a hug. "Welcome home, boys." Hey, Meli, you want to introduce us to your friends? Yeah, these are our new brothers, guys. Really? Christian looked at Rye and the others as Jesse followed Meli over to the pool. Adam walked over by Zane, while Carlin sat in a chair by the little pool of water. Christian and Rye walked over by Jesse, as Meli decided to introduce them to everyone. Okay, so guys, these are my other brothers. Jesse's technically my cousin, but he may as well be my brother. But this is Jesse, and he's Rye, and he's Christian. Hello. Hi. Hey. Hiya. Meli pointed to everyone as she introduced them. Over there we have Carlin on the left, and Adam on the right. Sup? Hi. Okay, and so then these guys I met on the train, and Jay said I could bring them back as inductees. So this is Ege, and Keith, and Luke. Hi. Hey. Hi. And then over by Jay, that's Tony. He's my casting partner. They all looked at Tony, and he kind of gave him a nod in recognition with a smile. Your casting partner? Yeah, he's really nice. Just try not to piss him off. Tony kind of snickered at that, and Jay chuckled at his response. Meli dropped her towel and hopped back in the pool, floating over by Luke. So, how was your trip? Jesse's voice was softer than the other Nahamo men. It was a similar tone to Joey's, but it was much softer to the ear. He seemed pretty friendly, but he definitely came across as quieter or more introverted than the others. Absolute hell, but at least we helped those people clear up the area. Good, that's good. Anything to report back then? Yeah. Jay, Joey, can I talk to you? Jesse motioned with his finger towards the forest opening of the cave. Do we have to now? I'm kind of doing something here. Joey tossed the football to Zane and then looked at Jesse annoyed. Yes, Joey, come on. Fine. Make it quick. Yeah, the water's so great today and I want to enjoy it. Jay and Joey walked just outside, following Jesse, and sat on the lava rocks talking. Meanwhile, inside the cave, the others were asking questions and having a good time. Hey guys, you want to come play volleyball with us? Sure, Meli, I'm game. Yeah, I'll play. Depends. Are we playing by your rules or our rules? Well, mine, of course. They laughed, and Carlin, Rye, and Christian all stripped down to their underwear and then climbed in the pool. Carlin went over on Keej and Eth's side, and Rye and Christian stood behind Meli and Luke. We need one more. Zane, Adam, one of you should come play with us. I'll play. Zane pulled his shirt and pants off, then jumped in and swam over, standing beside Keith and Carlin. They played, and Tony watched, sitting on the little ledge in the water, kind of observing everyone. Adam was the only one not in the pool at this point, except for Jay, Joey, and Jesse, who were outside. Adam watched a little, then looked down at Tony. Tony could feel him staring at the back of his head, and turned his head slightly, glancing back at him with a grin. Hey. Oh, hi. You gonna come chill or just stay back there by yourself? Adam had a hat on and hated taking it off. Adam's hat was actually enchanted, and allowed him to shapeshift into other people and animals. It was a Nahamic relic that he'd been given as a reward for completing a specific task that Meli had assigned him. He never talked about it. But the hat meant the world to him, and he didn't want to do anything to damage it. It's not that I'm trying to be antisocial, I just don't want to take my hat off. So then don't. But I don't want to get it wet. Just take it off? I don't like taking it off. Tony smiled and kindly turned around sideways so he was actually facing Adam. The reality was that Adam actually took his hat off often when he was relaxing, but there were new people around now, and he wasn't going to trust them so quickly. He would rather be prepared. Tony looked up at him, raising an eyebrow as he smiled. You got hat hair or something? No, it's just complicated. Ah, I get that. Well, you don't have to go splash around and be rowdy with the others. You could just chill here with me. That's what Jay was doing. I don't know. Well, it's your call, man. Either way, pull up a seat. Don't worry about the water. You're all skilled casters, I imagine. Even if it got wet, I'm sure fixing it or drying it off would be pretty easy enough. Adam kind of smiled at Tony as he smiled back. Adam had expected Tony to be a little more selective with who he talked to. After all, he didn't exactly look like the friendliest person. Tony often came across as intimidating, but once he opened up and decided to actually say hi, Adam changed his mind about him like most people eventually did. You're way friendlier than I thought you'd be. I get that a lot. I also got asked if I was gay once by one of my friends because I wasn't as rough as them and I get along well with girls. I haven't gotten that before. It's annoying, isn't it? Adam pulled a chair over and sat talking to Tony. Like, just because you're a quieter guy and enjoy hanging out with girls, somehow that makes you gay. If you ask me, it just makes you better with the ladies. Tony chuckled, then nodded with a big smile on his face. I've always found it to be effective. Adam nodded at Tony's response, then glanced up at Meli. He watched them jump around for a moment, then looked back at Tony. So, you're Meli's casting partner, right? Yeah, met her on the train. She actually started talking to me first, because no one else would. She's pretty chatty if you get her talking long enough. She's a sweetheart, for sure. It was probably interesting growing up with all guys. It does make her more mellow, though. Less dramatic, you know? Yeah, I'd definitely say it's a good thing. How'd she do talking to other girls? I bet that was interesting. Well, most of the girls died towards the beginning, but there were 3 or 4 girls she got along well with. One of them died, and the other 3 stayed at the Garden of Lily when we left to come with her. Why, did you come with her? Just out of curiosity. Well, honestly, Zane tried to take her, and then Jay and Joey showed up, and basically we said they weren't taking her without a fight. She didn't want anyone getting hurt, so she said she'd come back, but only if we could come with her. We just figured, sure, why not? It beats sitting in another classroom, you know? I hear that, but you may have made a mistake. What do you mean? It's not all pool parties and relaxing. Oh, I figured that. We only got in the pool because we all needed a bath. Speaking of which, Adam hesitated at first, but eventually pulled his shirt off and laid his hat on top of his clothes, then jumping in the pool. He came up and floated on his back, relaxing. This was worth it. I told you. Adam floated along, taking deep breaths every once in a while as he floated. Tony watched Meli play with the guys until she decided she was tired. Then she came over by Tony and Adam and sat beside Tony. Having fun, Meli? Yes. Thank you for coming. Of course, Meli. I wouldn't have let them take you without protest. He kissed the side of her head, then leaned back, resting his eyes. Meli used his arm as a pillow as she sat there, then jumped up like she just remembered something important. Oh, where'd my brothers go? Which ones, dork? Meli stuck her tongue out at Adam and smiled. Adam teased her often, but only because he knew it didn't bother her. Meli had an interesting relationship with each of her Nahamik brothers, and every one of them was different. They're still talking to Jesse. I wonder what about. Meli got up and stepped out of the pool, beginning to walk out where Jay and Joey were. Meli? Yeah, Tony? Forgetting something? She looked down and realized he was talking about her walking around in her underwear. Honestly, she hadn't thought twice about it. Oh. Oops. You'd think she'd be used to this by now. Living with a bunch of guys, I mean. Tony laughed and Meli picked up a towel, wrapping it around her, then began walking towards the opening of the cave. That's when Jay, Joey, and Jesse came back in. All right, everyone out of the pool. No relax until this is resolved. Carlin and Rye kind of moaned, complaining. They knew exactly what he was talking about. I can't believe you told him, Jess. Calm down, Rye. Everyone get out and get dressed. Then gather around down by the waterfall fire pit. Everyone climbed out of the pool and got into their other clean clothes, then sat down by the fire pit that literally was under the waterfall. Jay walked over to the fire pit, and the flame immediately lit as he sat down. So, Jesse just informed us about the trouble you saw while on the Africa cleanup mission, and I just gotta say, He paused a moment, then looked at Rye with a look of annoyance and yet pride. Really, Rye? Pirates? I'm sorry, Jay, but I didn't know they were casters. Wait a second, you ran into pirate casters? Yeah. And Rye, being his normal self, pissed him off. That's why we had to come home early. So then, what's the problem? The pirate casters are basically disturbing larger fishing vessels and looting small towns in many countries, including ones in Africa. They never get caught, because the Normos think their ships are simply going missing and the towns don't have any defenses because they're small enough that no one really notices. So, we're gonna go stop them. But it won't be easy, though. We all know what happens to casters on water. Actually, some of us are still a little new to this. Would you mind explaining? Basically, water makes casting easier and it makes casters stronger. But it also makes everything else stronger. Mermaids, sea monsters, krakens, giant sharks, you name it. If it's in the ocean, it's probably ready to kill. Some casters like Meli are immune to the charms and hallucinations of the open ocean. But for others, it can be quite the trip. Each got a look on his face as if he were excited. Cool. Jay looked at Meli and then motioned to Eej. I like this guy. He has no fear. Meli laughed, then Jay continued explaining the plan. We'll split up into 4 teams, with Joey, Jesse, Zane, and myself as the head of each team. We'll be leaving in 2 days, using tomorrow to practice with our new recruits. Then a good night's sleep will be followed by us leaving the next morning. Everyone good with that? They all nodded and then looked at each other, then back at Jay. I'll put together teams tonight, as well as the routes in which each team will take, and which towns they'll go through. See you all in the morning. Jay got up and began to walk off to bed, when Meli ran over and gave him a hug. He smiled and kissed her on the head, then going off to bed. Joey, Zane, and Jesse all followed soon after, each patting Meli on the head as they walked behind her. She smiled each time, feeling loved by each of her brothers. Christian, Adam, Carlin, and Rye played a few rounds of cards, then wandered off to bed as well. Meli showed her new brothers where they could sleep, and they were actually rather surprised by what they found. When they followed Meli to the back of the cave from the fire pit, they saw that Zane and Joey had hung up a few extra hammocks they had in one area on one side of the cave. Luke, Eej, and Keith all climbed up and immediately went off to sleep. But Meli led Tony away from the others, over to where her hammock hung. Why are we over here, Meli? I told Joey and Zane to hang yours over here by mine. You always laid by me before, so this shouldn't be much different. Probably comfier if you ask me. Thank you, Meli, but why? Well, I know you wake up sometimes at night and look over to see if I'm still there. Now you can sleep peacefully and you'll still hear if I move away. Thank you, Meli. I'm sorry if that seems kind of weird. It's okay, Tony. No one else knows what it's like because none of them have ever had a casting partner that lasted any amount of time. I understand, though. She kissed his cheek, then climbed up in her hammock. Thanks for having my back. He touched his cheek and smiled at her, climbing into his hammock beside her. Thanks for having mine. Tony got all comfy in his hammock, then looked at Meli. She was facing him, laying on her side, so he did the same, facing her. These are very comfortable. I like how they hang. Me too. Kind of like a nest, huh? Yeah, exactly. Plus, we can take them with us, so we'll always have somewhere to sleep up off the ground. I really missed mine. I'll bet. Meli smiled at him and slowly closed her eyes, drifting in and out of sleep. He reached over, moving a piece of her hair to the side of her face. Sleep tight, Meli. Tony laid back and stared up at the ceiling. He saw an opening in the roof of the cave where he could see the stars, and stared up at it as he closed his eyes slowly. That's when he started thinking about his father. He hadn't thought about him the entire time they were doing the forest trials, and suddenly now he popped into his mind. But why? Tony supposed it was because he could finally relax and breathe normally without worrying about his life being in danger. But really, he never really was worried about his life. He'd been worried about Melissa, which confused him to the point of his head spinning. It didn't matter now, though. They were safe, and about to start a new adventure together, and if he had to choose to be anywhere else, he couldn't. He was right where he wanted to be, with Meli. And that concludes Chapter 17. Thank you very much for listening. If you haven't already, subscribe below. And until next time, I love you very much. Bye.